The Rosie Cross uncovered. Rare book reprinted. God, because he was good, did not grieve to have others enjoy his goodness. That is, to be and to be well, meaning to make a world full of all kinds of everlasting and changeable things. First made all and blended them in one whole confused mass and lumped together, borne up by his own weight, bending round upon itself. Then seeing it lay still, and that naught could beget and work upon itself, he sorted out and sundered a way around about, a fine lively piece, which they call heaven, for the male mover and working, leaving still the rest as gross and deadly, which moves in opposition to light and is called darkness, the reward of the wicked, and below this lies the female, to receive the working and fashioning, which we term the four beginnings, or elements, earth, water, air, and fire, and thereof springs the love which we see get between them, and the great desire to be joined again and coupled together. Then, that these might be no number of confusion, enduing causes, but all to flow from one head, as he is one, he drew all force of working and virtue of begetting into one narrow and round compass, which we call soul. And thence he sent out, spread and bestowed all about the world, both above and below, which again, meeting together, made one general light, heat, nature, life and soul of the world, the cause of all things. And because it becometh the might, wisdom, and pleasure of God to make and rule the infinite variety of changes here below, and not evermore one self-same thing, he commanded that one light in many to run his eternal and restless race to and fro, this way and that way, that by their variable presence, absence, and meeting they might fitly work the continual changes of flitting creatures. So Virgil sings, thus translated by Eugenius Theodactus, and first the heaven, earth, and liquid plain, the moon's bright globe and stars titanian, a spirit fed within spread through the whole, and with the huge heap mixed and fused a soul. Hence man and beasts and birds derive their strain, and monsters floating in the marbled main. These seeds have fiery vigor and a birth of heavenly race, but clogged with heavy earth. Now there are a kind of men, and they themselves report, named Rosicrucians, a divine fraternity that inhabit the suburbs of heaven, and these are the officers of the generaliso of the world, that are as the eyes and ears of the great king, seeing and hearing all things. They say these Rosicrucians are seraphifically illuminated, as Moses was, according to this order of the elements, earth refined to water, water to air, air to fire. So of a man to be one of the heroes, of a heroes a daemon, or good genius, of a genius a partaker of divine things, and a companion of the holy company of unbodied souls and immortal angels, and according to their vehicles a versatile life, turning themselves, Proteus-like, unto any shape. But the richest happiness they esteem is the gift of healing and medicine. It was a long time, great labor and travel before they could arrive to this bliss above set. They were at first poor gentlemen that studied God and nature, as they themselves confess, saving, seeing the only wise and merciful God in these latter days hath poured out so richly his mercy and goodness to mankind, whereby we do attain more and more to the perfect knowledge of his Son Jesus Christ and nature, that justly we may boast of the happy time, wherein there is not only discovered unto us the half part of the world, which was heretofore unknown and hidden, but he hath also made manifest unto us many wonderful and never heretofore seen works and creatures of nature, and moreover hath raised men imbued with great wisdom, which might partly renew and reduce all arts, in this our age spotted and imperfect, to perfection. So finally man might thereby understand his own nobleness and worth, and why he is called microcosmos, and how far knowledge extendeth in nature. Although the rude world herewith will be but little pleased, but rather smile and scoff thereat, also the pride and covetousness of the learned is so great, it will not suffer them to agree altogether. But were they united, they might out of all those things, which in this our age God doth so richly bestow upon us, collect the book of nature, or a perfect method of all other arts, whereof this is the chief, and therefore called the RC Axiomata. But such is their opposition that they still keep and are loath to leave the old course, esteeming Porphyry, Aristotle, and Galen, yea, and that which hath but a mere show of learning, more than the clear and manifest light and truth, who if they were now living with much joy would leave their erroneous doctrines. But here is too great weakness for such a great work. And although in theology, physic, and the mathematics, the truth doth oppose it itself, nevertheless the old enemy by its subtlety and craft doth show himself in hindering every good purpose by his instruments and contentions. Wavering people. To such an intent of a general reformation, the most godly and seraphically illuminated father, our brother C.R., a German, the chief and original of our fraternity, hath much and long time laboured, who by reason of his poverty, although a gentleman born and descended of noble parents, in the 5th year of his age was placed in a cloister, where he had learned indifferently the Greek and Latin tongues, who upon his earnest desire and request, being yet in his growing years, was associated to a brother P.A.L., who had determined to go to Apamea. Although his brother died in Cyprus, and so never came to Apamea, yet our brother C.R. did not return, but shipped himself over and went to Damascus, minding from thence to go to Apamea. But by reason of the feebleness of his body he remained still there, and by his skill in physic he obtained much favor with the Ishmaelites. In the meantime he became by chance acquainted with the wise men of Damcar in Arabia, and beheld what great wonders they wrought, and how nature was discovered unto them. Hereby was that high and noble spirit of brother C.R. so stirred up that Apamea was not so much now in his mind as Damcar. Also he could not bridle his desires any longer, but made a bargain with the Arabians that they should carry him for a certain sum of money to Damcar. This was in the 16th year of his age, when the wise received him, as he himself witnesseth, not as a stranger, but as one whom they had long expected. They called him by his name, and showed him other secrets out of his cloister, whereat he could not but mightily wonder. He learned there better the Arabian tongue, so that the year following the translation, the book M into good Latin, and I have put it into English, wearing the title of the wise man's crown, whereunto is added a new method of Rosicrucian physic. This is the place where he did learn his physic and philosophy now to raise the dead. For example, as a snake cut in pieces and rotted in dung, will every piece prove a whole snake again, etc. And then they begin to practice further matters, and to kill birds that are bred by force of seed and conjunction of male and female, and to burn them before they are cold in a glass, and so rotted, and then enclosed in a shell, to hatch it under a hen, and restore the same, and other strange proofs they made of dogs, hogs, or horses, and by the like kindly corruption to raise them up again, and renew them. And at last they could restore by the same course every brother that died to life again, and so continue many ages, the rules you find in the 4th book. Let me speak a word, although I am no Rosicrucian, of this matter and manner of restoring of a man. Let us call it before reason, and consider what is that seed that makes man, and the place where he is made. What is all the work? Is it anything else but a part of man, except his mind, rooted in a continual, even gentle, moist, and natural heat? Is it not like that the whole body, rotted in like manner, and in womb agreeable, shall swim out at last chicken and arise the same thing? As Medea found true upon Jason's father and made him young again, as Tully saith, Requindo and Hermes was after the manner raised from death to life, so was Virgil the poet. But the Spanish earl failed, through the ignorance of his friend the artist, that mistook the heat, moisture, and temper of the work, as you heard in the 3rd book. But I cannot tell. I will neither avow nor disavow the matter. Nature is deep and wonderful in her deeds, if they be searched to the bottom and may suffer this, but not religion. But to our R.C., who learned his mathematics here, whereof the world hath just cause to rejoice, if there were more love and less envy, after 3 years he returned again with good consent, shipped himself over Sinus Arabicus into Egypt. where he remained not long, but only took better notice there of the plants and creatures, of mineral medicines, the famous aurum potabile, that cures all diseases in body and mind, and of the oil of God. Then he sailed over the whole Mediterranean Sea, for to come under Fez, where the Arabian had directed him. And it is a great shame unto us that wise men so far remote from one another should not only be of one opinion, hating all contentious writings, but also be so willing and ready under the seal of secrecy to impart their secrets to others. Every year the Arabians and Africans do send one to another, inquiring one of another out of their arts, if haply they have found out some better things, or if experience had weakened their reasons. Yearly there came something to light, whereby the Mathematica, Chizir, and Magir, for in those are they the Fez most skillful, were amended, as there is nowadays in Germany no want of learned men, Kabbalists, physicians, astrologers, geomancers, and philosophers. Were there but love and more kindness among them, or that the most part of them would not keep their secrets, as we Germans likewise might gather together many things. If there were the like unity and desire of searching out of secrets amongst us. After 2 years, Brother C.R. departed the city Fez and sailed with many costly things into Spain, hoping well. He so well and so profitably spent his time in travel that the learned in Europe would highly rejoice with him and begin to rule, and order all their studies according to those sound and sure foundations. He therefore conferred with the learned in Madrid, showing them the errors of Sodom and Gomorrah, and how the faults of the Church by the Episcopacy and the whole Philosophia Moralis was to be amended. But because their acceptance happened to him contrary to his expectation, being then ready bountifully to impart all his arts and secrets to the learned, if they would have but undertaken to write the true and infallible axiomata, which he knew would direct them, like a globe or circle, to the only middle point and centrum, and, as it is usual among the Arabians, it should only serve to the wise and learned for a rule, that also there might be a society in Canaan, which should have gold, silver, and precious stones, sufficient for to bestow them in kings for their necessary uses and lawful purposes, with which such as be governors might be brought up to learn all that which God hath suffered man to know. Brother C.R., after many travels and his fruitless true instructions, returned again into Germany, and there builded a neat and fitting habitation upon a little hill or mount, and on the hill there rested always a cloud, and he did there render himself visible or invisible at his own will and discretion. In this house he spent a great time in the mathematics, and made fine instruments, ex omnibus hejus artis partibus. Rare Rosicrucian document, London, 1667. After 5 years came into his mind the wished return of the children of Israel out of Egypt, how God would bring them out of bondage with the instrument Moses. Then he went to his cloister, to which he bare affection, and desired 3 of his brethren to go with him to Moses, the chosen servant of God, Brother G.V., Brother I.A., and Brother I.O., who besides that they had more knowledge in the arts than at that time many others had. He did bind those 3 unto himself, to be faithful, diligent, and secret, as also to commit carefully to writing that Moses did, and also all that which he should direct and instruct them in, to the end that those which were to come, and through a special revelation should be received in this fraternity, might not be deceived of the least syllable and word. After this manner began the fraternity of the Rosy Cross, first by 4 persons who died and rose again until Christ, and then they came to worship as the star guided them to Bethlehem of Judea, where lay our Savior in his mother's arms, and then they opened their treasure, and presented unto him gifts, gold, frankincense, and myrrh, and by the commandment of God went home to their habitation. These 4 waxing young again successively many hundreds of years, made a magical language and writing, with a large dictionary, which we yet daily use to God's praise and glory, and do find great wisdom therein. They made also the first part of the book M, which I will shortly publish by the title of The Wise Man's Crown. Now, whilst brother C.R. was in a proper womb quickening, they concluded to draw and receive yet others more into their fraternity. To this end was chosen brother R.G., his deceased father's son, brother B., a skillful painter, G., their secretary, and P.D., another brother elected by consent, and E.F., all Germans except I.A. So in all they were 9 in number, all bachelors and vowed virginity. By those was collected a volume of all that which man can desire, wish, or hope for. After such a most laudable sort they did spend their lives, and although they were free from all diseases and pain, yet notwithstanding they could not live and pass their time appointed of God. So they all died at the death of our Lord and Saviour Jesus Christ, and their spirits attended him in glory. Now the second row of these men, by many were called the wise men of the East, and 81 years the secrets of this fraternity were concealed. Now the true and fundamental relation of finding the memory of the fraternity of the Rosy Cross is this. A learned man in Germany went to find out the wise men of the East into many countries, but could never hear of any of them. So being provided of gold and silver, medicines, tinctures, and talismans, he chose a master of numbers, A, to be his companion. And finding an old strange habitation, they then set themselves to alter this building, in which renewing he lighted upon the memorial table, which was cast in brass, and contained all the names of the brethren, with some few other things. This he transferred to another, more fitting vault, with great joy, for he had never heard of this fraternity, being all dead 81 years before his time. In this table stuck a great nail, something strong, so that when it was with a force drawn out, it took with it a stone and a piece of thin wall, or plastering of the hidden door, and so unlooked for uncovered the door. Wherefore we did with joy and longing thrown down the rest of the wall and cleared the door, upon which was written in great letters, Post 81 Annos Patibo, with the year of our Lord under it. Wherefore we gave God thanks, and let it rest that same night. In the morning following we opened the door, and there appeared to our sight a vault of 7 sides and corners, every side 5 foot broad, and the height of 9 foot. Although the sun never shined in this vault, nevertheless it was enlightened with another sun, which had learned this of the sun, and was situated in the upper part of the center of the ceiling. In the midst, instead of a tombstone, was a round altar, covered over with a plate of brass, and thereupon was this engraven, A.C.R.O. Hoc Universi Compendium, Unius Mihi Sepulchrum Feri. Round about the first circle or brim stood Jesus Mihi Omnia. In the middle were 4 figures enclosed in 4 circles, whose circumscription was 1. Nequaquam vacuum, 2. Legis jugum, 3. Libertas Evangeli, 4. Dei Gloria intacta. This all clear and bright, as also the 7th side and the 2 hepthgoni. So we kneeled down together and gave thanks to the sole wise, sole mighty, and sole eternal God, who hath taught us more than all men's wit could have found out. And praised be his holy name. This vault we parted into 3 parts, the upper part or ceiling, the wall or side, the ground or floor. Of the upper part you shall understand no more of it at this time, but that it was divided according to the 7 sides in the triangle, which was in the bright center. But what therein is contained you shall, God willing, that are desirous of our society, behold the same with your own eyes. But every side or wall is parted into 10 squares, every one with their several figures and sentences, as they truly shewn and set forth concertatum here in this book. The bottom again is parted in the triangle, but because therein is described the power and rule of the inferior governors, we leave to manifest the same, for fear of the abuse of the evil and the ungodly world. But those that are provided and stored with the heavenly antidote, they do without fear or hurt tread on the head of our old and evil serpent, which this our age is well fitted for. Every side or wall had a door for a chest, wherein there lay diverse things, especially all the works of C.R., how he and his brethren raised each other to life again. In those books were written of their going to Bethlehem to worship our Savior Jesus Christ, and of the Itinerarium, and Vitam of CR. In other chests were looking-glasses of diverse virtues, as also in other places were little ells and rings, which if any man put upon his finger, he seemed now in green, then in white and blue, red and bloom, and all manner of colors. Thus will his garments change into a pure color every moment. There were burning lamps and wonderful artificial songs, which they had kept ever since God spoke to Moses on the mount. They kept the Old Testament carefully and expected Christ to be born, and chose 45 more to bear witness to the incredulous world and superstitious sects that Christ is the Son of God and was crucified at Jerusalem, and left these brethren all the wonderful works of God and the acts of Moses and the prophets to the end, that if it should happen after many hundreds of years, the order or fraternity should come to nothing, and if tyrants should burn the Old Testaments which they bear witness to be the word of God, that then they might be by this only vault be restored again. And there is another vault or habitation of the brethren in the west of England, and there is recorded all the New Testament and every chapter explained. Now as yet we had not seen the dead body of our careful and wise father in the German hill. We therefore removed the altar aside. There we lifted up a strong plate of brass, and found a fair and worthy body whole and unconsumed. As the same is here, lively counterfeited with all the ornaments and attires. In his hand he held a parchment book divided into 2 parts. The first was the Old Testament, and every chapter interpreted, and the other book is the Book 1, which next unto the Bible is our greatest treasure, which ought to be delivered to the creature of the world. At the end of this book standeth this following eulogium. Underneath they had subscribed themselves: 1. Fra I.A. Fra C.H. Fra I.H. Lectionem Fraternatis Caput. 2. Fra G.V.M. P.C.S. 3. Fra R.C. Jr. Hers S. Spiritus. 4. Fra B.M.P.A. Pictor and Architectus. 5. Fra G.G. F.H. M.P. I.C.A.M. Kabbalista. F.W. N.Q. A.Z.B.X.O.N. P.E.D. L.F.K. M.Z.A. S.C.R. Secundi Circuli. 1. Fra T.H. Successor. Fra P.A. Mathematicus. 2. Fra I.O. Successor. Fra A.D. 3. Fra P.R. Successor Patris, C.R.C. Cum Christo Triumphant. At the end was written, Ex Dio nascimur, in Jesu morimus, per spiritum sanctum revivissimus. At this day the Rosicrucians that have been since Christ say their fraternity inhabits the west of England, and they have likewise power to renew themselves and wax young again, as those did before the birth of Jesus Christ, as you may read in many books. And Dr. F. saith, somewhere there is a castle in the west of England, in the earth and not on the earth, and there the Rosicrucians dwell, guarded without walls and possessing nothing. They enjoy all things. In this castle is great riches, the halls fair and rich to behold, and the chambers are made and composed of white marble. At the end of the hall there is a chimney, whereof the 2 pillars that sustain the mantle tree are of fine jasper, and the mantle is of rich chalcedony, and the lintel is made of fine emeralds, trailing with a wing of fine gold, and the grapes of fine silver. And all the pillars in the hall are of red chalcedony, and the pavement is of fine amber. The chambers are hanged with rich clothes, and the benches and bedsteads are all of white ivory, richly garnished with precious stones. The beds were richly covered. There are ivory presses, whereon all manner of birds cunningly wrought, and in these presses are gowns and robes of most fine gold, and most rich mantles, furred with sables, and all manner of rich garments. And there is a vault, but it is bigger than that in Germany, which is as clear as though the sun in the midst of the day had entered in at 10 windows, yet it is 70 steps underground, and there are 10 servants of the Rosicrucians, fair young men, and C.B. reports this when I first came to the society, saith he. I saw a great oven with 2 mouths, which did cast out great clearness, by which 4 young men made bast for bread. and 2 delivered the loaves to the other 2, and they sit them down upon a cloth of silk. Then the other 2 men took the loaves, and delivered them unto one man by 2 loaves at once, and he did sit them into the oven to bake. And at the mouth of the oven there was a man that drew out the white loaves and pastes, and before him was another young man. They received them, and put them into baskets, which were richly painted. CB went into another chamber, 81 cubits from this, and the Rosicrucians welcomed him, for he found a table ready set, and the cloth laid, and there stood pots of silver, and vessels of gold, bordered with precious stones and pearl, and basins and ewers of gold to wash their hands. Then we went to dinner, of all manner of flesh, fowl, and fish, of all manner of meat in the world. There they had plenty, and pots of gold garnished with precious stones full of wine. This chamber was made of crystal, and painted richly with gold and azure. And upon the walls were written and engraven all things past, present, and to come, and all manner of golden medicines for the deceased, as you read in the prefaces. Upon the pavement was spread abroad roses, flowers, and herbs, sweet-smelling above all favours in the world. And in this chamber were divers birds flying about and singing marvellous sweetly. In this place I have a desire to live, if it were for no other reason but what the Sophies sometimes applied to the mountains. But of this place I will not speak any more, lest the readers should mistake me, so as to entertain a suspicion that I am of this order. Tobias Williams, Noah Walford, Fra. H.W., VCBI, and these in all are 36 that bear witness of Christ. And Fra N. chose C.B. for his successor, saying, I have long expected your coming. In this place you shall live, and we will teach you all things, and you shall learn our axiomata. First you must, as we do, profess medicine and cure the sick, and that gratis. 2. You shall not be constrained to wear any one certain kind of habit, but may therein follow the custom of the country. 3. Every year upon the day C, you shall meet us in this house, S. Spiritus, or write the cause of your absence. And when I am dead, lay me in a glass, and renew me according to nature to live again, as you were taught by us. 4. And you must look about for a worthy person, who after your decease must succeed you. 5. The word R.C. must be your mark, seal, and character. 6. Our fraternity shall be concealed 7 years and no more. And 30 of the brethren departed. Only 4 and the brethren T.W. and N.W. remained with the father Fra. R.C.I.A. and their servants a whole year, and T.W. died. And Father I.A. put him in a glass and buried him for renewing his life. After a few years, there will be a general reformation, both of divine and human things, according to our desire, and the expectation of others. For it's sitting that before the rising of the sun there should appear and break forth aurora, or divine light in the sky. And so in the meantime some few which shall give their names may join together, thereby to increase the number and respect of our fraternity, and make a happy and wished for beginning of our philosophical canons prescribed to us by our brother R.C., and be partakers with us of our treasures, which never can fail or be wasted, in all humility and love to be eased of this world's labor, and not walk to blindly in the knowledge of the wonderful works of God. But that also every Christian may know of what religion and belief we are. We confess to have the knowledge of Jesus Christ among his disciples, and he is the Son of God, and was crucified for mankind at Jerusalem. Him did our eyes see and worship, being guided by a star. And our episcopacy is best form of church government, being most clear and purely professed, and cleansed from factious Presbyterians, Cromwellian Anabaptists, Jesuitical Quakers, and false prophets. Also we use 2 sacraments, as they are instituted with all forms and ceremonies of the first renewed church in England. We acknowledge Carolus Magnus Secundus for our Christian head, and in Politia we acknowledge the Protestant Empire and Quartum Monarchium for our government. Albeit we know what alterations be at hand, 1663, 64, 65, 66, 67, 68, and 69. and would fain impart the same with all our hearts to other godly learned men. Notwithstanding our writings which is in our hands, no man except God alone can make it common, nor any unworthy person is able to bereave us of it. But we shall help with secret aid. This is so good a cause as God shall permit or hinder us. For our God is not blind as the heathens' Forteana, but is the church's ornament and the honor of the temple. Our philosophy of numbers also is not a new invention, but as Adam after his fall hath received it, and as Moses and Solomon our men used it, also she ought not much to be doubted of or contradicted by other opinions or meanings, but seeing the truth is peaceable, brief, and always like herself in all things, and especially accordingly with Jesus in omni parte, and all members. And as he is the image of the Father, so is she his image. It shall not be said that this is true according in philosophy, but true according to theology. And others did hit the mark, and wherein Plato, Aristotle, Pythagoras, and Enoch, Abraham, Moses, our men, and Solomon did excel, but especially wherewith that wonderful book the Bible agreeth. All that same concurreth together, and maketh a sphere or globe, whose total parts are equidistant from the centre, as hereof more at large, and plain shall be spoken in Christianly conference. But now concerning, and chiefly in this our age, the ungodly and accursed gold-making, which hath gotten so much the upper hand, whereby under colour of it many runagates and roguish people do use great villainies, and cozen and abuse the credit which is given them. Yea, nowadays men of discretion do hold the transmutation of metals to be the highest point, and fastigium in the philosophy, this is all their intent and desire, and that God would be most esteemed by them, and honoured, which could make great store of gold, and in abundance, the which, with unpremeditated prayers, they hope to obtain the all-knowing God, and searcher of all hearts. We therefore do by these present publicly testify, that the true philosophers are far of another mind, esteeming little the making of gold, which is but a paragon, for besides that they have 1,000 better things. And we say with our loving forefathers, Fi aurum nisi quantum aurum. For unto them the whole nature is detected. He doth not rejoice that he can make gold, and that, as saith Christ, the angels and devils are obedient unto him, but is glad that he seeth the heaven open, and the angels of God ascending and descending, and his name written in the book of life. Also we do testify that under the name of Chimia many books and pictures are set forth in contumelium glory Dei, as we will name in their due season, and will give to the pure-hearted a catalogue or register of them. And we pray all learned men take heed of the Aurum Chimicum Britannicum, published by Elias Ashmole, Esquire, and such kind of books as these. For the enemy never resteth, but soweth his weeds till a stronger one doth root it out. To conclude, the Rosicrucians say, pearl helpeth surroundings and withstands the plague of poisons, and that smarage and jacinth helps the plague, and heals and wounds of venomous stings. The water of Nile makes the women of Egypt quick of conceit and fruitful, and sometimes they bear 7 children at a birth, and this is salpetra water. There is a wonderful virtue in the oil of tobacco, in the tincture of saffron, in the flour of brimstone, in quicksilver, in common salt and copperas, molten and made a water, kills the poison of the toadstool, then juice of poppy, amber, which is no stone, but a hard clammy juice, called bitumen, easeth the labour of women and the falling sickness in children. Now for metals, if it be true which all men grant that precious stones in that hard and ungentle fashion show such virtue and power of healing, what shall the mixtures of all these metals under a fortunate constellation, made in the conversion of their own planets do, which they call electrum, sigil, and telesme, saying it will cure the cramp, benumbing palsy, falling sickness, gout, leprosy, dropsy, if it be worn on the heart finger. Others they make to cause beauty in ladies, etc. The third perfume of Arcee is compounded of the sapphiric earth and the ether. If it be brought to its full exaltation, it will shine like the day star in her fresh eastern glories. It hath a fascinating attractive faculty, For if you expose it to the open air, it will draw to it birds and beasts and drive away evil spirits. Astrum Solis, or the RC mineral sun, is compounded of the ether and a bloody, fiery, spirited earth. It appears in a gummy consistency, but with a fiery, hot, glowing complexion. It is substantially a certain purple, animated, divine salt, and cureth all manner of venereal distempers, consumptions, and diseases of the mind. We give another medicine, which is an azure or sky-colored water. The tincture of it is light and bright. It reflects a most beautiful rainbow. And 2 drops of this water keeps a man healthy. In this water lies a blood-red earth of great virtue. The other medicine is the heavenly luna and moon of the mind, a very strange stupefying substance. It is not simple but mixed. The ether and a subtle white earth are its components, and this makes it grosser than the ether itself. It appears in the form of an exceeding white oil, but in very truth a certain vegetant, a flowing, smooth, soft salt, and this reneweth youth and causeth wisdom and virtue. The Pantarva of Rosicrucians is a water and no stone. It after night discovers a fire as bright as day. And if you look on it in the daytime, it dazzles the eye with certain gleams of coruscations. For in it is a spirit of admirable power, to long life, wisdom, and virtue. Now I will show who taught these secrets and showed me these things. Walking upon the plain of Bulverton Hill to study numbers and the nature of things one evening, I could see between me and the light a most exquisite divine beauty. Her frame neither long nor short, but a mean decent stature. Attired she was in those loose silks, but so green that I never saw the like. For the color was not earthy. In some places it was fancied, with gold and silver ribbons, which looked like the sun and lilies in the field of grass. Her head was overcast with a thin floating tiffany, which she held up with one of her hands and looked as it were from under it. Her eyes were quick, fresh, and celestial, but had something of a start, as if she had been puzzled with a sudden occurrence. From her veil did her locks break out, like sunbeams from a mist. They ran dishevelled to her breast, and then returned to her cheeks in curls and rings of gold. Her hair behind her was rolled to a curious globe, with a small, short spire flowered with purple and sky-colored knots. Her rings were pure entire emeralds, for she valued no metal, and her pendants of burning carbuncles. In brief, her whole habit was youthful and flowery. It smelt like the East and was thoroughly aired with rich Arabian diapasms. This and no other was her appearance at that time. But whilst I admired her perfections and prepared to make my addresses, she prevents me with a voluntary approach. Here indeed I expected some discourse from her, but she, looking very seriously and silently in my face, takes me by the hand and softly whispers, "My love I freely give you. And with it these tokens, my key and signet. The one opens, the other shuts. Be sure to use both with discretion. As for the mysteries of the Rosy Cross, you have my library to peruse them all. There is not anything here, but I will gladly reveal it to you. I will teach you the virtue of numbers, of names, of angels and genii, of men. I have one precept to command to you, and this is it. You must be silent. You shall not in your writings exceed my allowance. Remember that I am your love, and you will not make me a prostitute. But because I wish you serviceable to those of your own disposition, I here give you an emblematical type of my sanctuary, viz., the axiomata of the RC, the secret of numbers, with a full privilege to publish it. This is all, and now I am going to the invisible region amongst the ethereal goddesses. Let not that proverb take place with you. Out of sight, out of mind, remember me, and be happy." Now I asked her if she would favor me with her name. To this she replied very familiarly, as if she had known me long before. "My dear friend H., I have many names, but my best beloved is Euterpe. Observe in your RC axiomata that the genuine time of impression of characters, names, angels, numbers, and genii of men is when the principles are spermati and kalilo. But being once coagulated to a perfect body, the time of stilification is past." Now the RC in old time used strange astrological lamps, images, rings, and plates, with the numbers or names engraven, which at certain hours would produce incredible, extraordinary effects. The common astrologer, he takes a piece of metals. Another whining associate, he helps him with a crystal stone. And these they figure with ridiculous characters, and then expose them to the planets, not in an alchemist, but as they dream they know not what. When this is all done, all is to no purpose. But though they fail in their practice, yet they believe they understand the axiomata of numbers well enough. Now, my beloved J.H., that you know what to do. I will teach you by example. Take a ripe grain of corn that is hard and dry. Expose it to the sunbeams in a glass or any other vessel, and it will be a dry grain forever. But if you do bury it in the earth, that the nitrous, saltish moisture of the element may dissolve it, then the sun will work upon it, and make it spring and sprout to a new body. It is just thus with the common astrologer. He exposeth to the planets a perfect compacted body, and by this means thinks to perform the Rosicrucian game, and marry the inferior and superior worlds. It must be a body reduced into sperm, that the heavenly feminine moisture which receives and retains the impress of the astral agent may be at liberty, and immediately exposed to the masculine fire of nature. This is the ground of the barrel. But you must remember that nothing can be stellified without the joint magnetism of three heavens. What they are, you already know. When she had thus said, she took out of her bosom 2 miraculous medals with numbers and names on them. They were not metalline, but such as I had never seen, neither did I conceive there was in nature such pure and glorious substances. In my judgment, they were 2 magical talismans, but she called the sapphirics of the sun and moon. These miracles Euterpe commended to my perusal, and stooped in a mute ceremony. For I was to be left alone. She looked upon me in silent smiles, mixed with a pretty kind of sadness, for we were unwilling to part. But her hour of translation was come, and taking, as I thought, our last leave, she passed before my eyes into the ether of nature, excusing herself as being sleepy. Otherwise she had expounded them to me. I looked, admired, and wearied myself in that contemplation. Their complexion was so heavenly, their continuance so mysterious, I did not well know what to make of them. I turned aside to see if she was still asleep, but she was gone, and this did not a little trouble me. I expected her return till the day was quite spent, but she did not appear. At last, fixing my eyes on that place where she sometimes rested, I discovered certain pieces of gold, full of numbers and names, which she had left behind her, and hard by a paper folded like a letter. These I took up, and now the night approaching, the even star tinned in the west. When taking my last survey of her flowery pillow, I parted from it in these verses. Pretty green bank, farewell, and mayest thou wear sunbeams and rose and lilies all the year. She slept on thee, but needed not to shed her gold. 'Twas pay enough to be her bed. Thy flowers are favorites for this loved day. They were my rivals, and with her did play. They found their heaven at hand, and in her eyes enjoyed a copy of their absent skies. Their weaker paint did with true glories trade, and mingled with her cheeks one posy made. And did not her soft skin confine their pride, and with a screen of silk her flowers divide? They had sucked life from thence, and from her heat borrowed a soul to make themselves complete. O happy pillow, thou art laid even with dust. She made thee up almost to heaven. Her breath rained spices, and each amber ring of her bright locks strewed bracelets over thy spring. That earth's not poor did such a treasure hold, but thrice enriched with amber, spice, and gold. Thus much at this time, and no more am I allowed by my mistress Euterpe to publish. Be therefore, gentle reader, admonished that with me you do earnestly pray to God, that it please him to open the hearts and ears of all ill-hearing people, and to grant unto them his blessing, that they might be able to know him in his omnipotency, with admiring contemplation of nature, to his honor and praise, and to the love, help, comfort, and strengthening of our neighbors, and to the restoring of all the deceased by the medicines above taught. I had given you a more large account of the mysteries of nature than the Rosy Cross, but whilst I studied medicines to cure others, my dear sister, Anne Haydon, died, and I never heard she was sick. for she was 100 miles from me, which puts an end to my writings, and thus I take my leave of the world. I shall write no more. You know my books by name, and this I write, that none may abuse me, by printing books in my name as coal does Culpepper's, but return to my first happy solitudes. Finney